know that it's got to be frustrating in Joe Biden's America.
Oh, you wouldn't believe it if I told you.
Yeah, well, it's just you and me.
Yeah, I call it the clown world up here. You know, I actually had a job for a living, you know, for 35 years, and afterwards, after I retired from because I wasn't going to let them beat me, and it was satisfying, but I ran. But you know, my dad was military, died on active duty, but I was in education all those years, and one of the reasons I ran because the last 10, 15 years I saw the direction our country was going because of what we're doing in education, and folks, we are in bad shape. College now, but hopefully have grandkids, and I want them to have what we've had the opportunity to have, but today they're being indoctrinated in education. All this woke, transgender athletes, CRT, 1619, we don't teach Now, if you can't read, and if you can't read in the United States, you're not taught to read, you can imagine what other countries are doing.
Yeah, and a lot of this is not hard. You know, it's just like football. You get
basics.
You get back to the basic blocking and tackling.
Yeah.
And this, in education, indoctrination system where we're trying to teach an ideology, where we're trying to brainwash these kids at really their most vulnerable age. If you remember the bill that they successfully passed in Florida, it was to teach third graders and below that they couldn't teach them these, you know, very sensitive gender issues. And the hue and cry of across the country at something that basic. Why don't you talk a little bit about in the United States Senate, you know, how are you pushing back? How is the Senate and how are Republicans on Capitol Hill pushing back against the Biden administration and their policies?
Well, every day it's something new.
Yeah.
By their ideology. And they know, the left knows, especially the far left, the progressives, the crazies, they know that if they can get to our young kids, then it will change everything just in a short period of time. And they've been able to do that. And I heard the group earlier talking about parents. And I said this during the campaign, you want to make a difference in life, you run for the school. COVID, when Zoom was going on, and kids weren't in school, but their parents are watching what they're being taught on computers and their iPads, going, what in the world is going on here? Well, it's been going like that for a while. Folks, we're in trouble. Our country is in trouble, and it starts with education. Until we start recognizing what the left is doing, trying to change family, trying to change the things that are our moral values, we've got no chance. Yeah. We've got no chance.
Recent Supreme Court appointee couldn't say what a woman was. She herself a woman couldn't define what a woman was. And I think that points to just how top to bottom and you saw where, for example, the advanced placement Black studies and African American studies included, some very progressive ideology that had nothing about the history to do with the history of Black America, or that whole moment in time that we've been interested in transgender in sports, where that's going, whether biological males can compete against biological females and dominate in some cases. I mean, do you have any perspective on that as to how it just seems fundamentally unfair to me?
Well, it's just another step of what the left's doing. It's their game plan. There's no doubt about it. They're that's got to stop, and that's the reason we're all for school choice, to let parents send their kids where they can get an education. These kids don't need to be indoctrinated. Teach them about America. And listen, I coach minorities most of my life. 80% of the athletes in any sport are minorities. I loved every minute of it. I loved every one of them. But you know what? I didn't treat any of Title IX started 50 years ago, and I was first coach in high school, almost at that time. And Title IX basically says, let's give girls an opportunity, young girls and women, the chance to do what the guys are doing. And it's probably the most percent increase in girls playing sports since Title IX. 600. Think about that, 600%. Now, it said you had to have the same funding, same amount of coaches, same facilities, and federal law that actually worked. We don't need big government, but that's something that worked. Well, now what's happened? The feminist group don't like that. They don't like that because it has empowered the leadership of women in a lot of things. I've got a cohort now that's the first woman senator in the state of Alabama, Katie Britt, and she's going to be outstanding. And because of athletes, her husband was an athlete, played at Alabama, all those things together. But that being said, now they want to destroy Title IX. They want to destroy it. I'm looking around some of my Democratic colleagues going, what? Do you not have granddaughters? Do you not have girls? I don't understand what you're trying to do. They want non-biological boys to play in women's sports. 23 national championships have been won by boys competing in girls' sports in the last 15, 17 years. Think about that, 23. It is not right. It is unfair. It is unsafe. And it is wrong. And how they can't figure this out, I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned another thing that, we have in my home state of Iowa. Any Hawkeyes are out there? My home state of Iowa, Kim
Those
Reynolds.
Are Iowa State fans.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't. They're from Iowa, but not for the Hawkeyes. I get it. That happens every once in a while. Not very often. But in Iowa, Kim Reynolds and the legislature passed a very aggressive and important school choice bill that really puts their children's education in the hands of the parents, which, to your point earlier, is exactly where it needs to be. And there's a lot of states now that are picking up that movement. And I think it's going to improve education, because as a parent, if you can determine where your child goes to school that's best for them instead of just where you happen to live, I think that just opens up tremendous opportunities really for every kid. Because, as I often say in the context of crime and violence, every child deserves to play safely in their front yard. And likewise, every child deserves a world-class education.